Before the insurrection, the FBI and the police intercepted these quotes that show that the people who invaded the Capitol, or at least many of the people who invaded the Capitol on January 6th, were not protesters. They were there for blood. Check it out. Leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. But to start out, we have crimes from treason to murder that were committed on January 6th. And crime fighters need to find the people involved, right? And I don't think a commission is the way to do it, at least not now. I mean, you can have a commission later on when you want to look back in retrospect and all the evidence is in and all the people have been nailed and all that kind of stuff. But we need to find out first what happened on and in the time leading up to the January 6th overthrow of our country, including the meeting at Trump Hotel January 5th, where Tommy Tuberville and a bunch of these guys, Don Jr. and a bunch of them, apparently, well, we don't know for sure because, you know, nobody has yet kind of broken omerta, you know, the code of silence, but apparently we're planning this assault on the Capitol. But now we've got Nancy Pelosi and a few other Democrats saying we need a bipartisan 9/11 commission. And I think this would be a terrible mistake. First of all, bipartisan is by definition, if you're talking about the people of Washington, D.C., a mistake. I think if you polled Democrats and Republicans all across the country who are not elected officials, they would say, sure, you know, we want to know what's going on equally, both of us. But the guys in Washington, D.C., many of whom were apparently complicit in this, and who even after the Capitol was stormed, 140 of them said, hey, to hell with the election, we want Donald Trump. I don't think that you're going to find that they are going to have much to say about this that would be worth listening to, frankly. And this whole bipartisan thing, you know, these kinds of commissions tend to produce just totally milquetoast outcomes. I mean, consider the Warren Commission or the 9/11 Commission, both of which had huge holes in them, and both of them were viewed as either, you know, or possibly even cover-ups. And there are huge questions that America deserves answers to, and we deserve answers to now. For example, a report was just released by the Inspector General's Office of the Capitol Police. This came out in the New York Times yesterday. It's not yet public, but the Times read it, and they excerpted parts of it that were apparently not classified. And these are some of the quotes from some of the people who were heading to the Capitol that the Capitol Police intercepted or the Capitol Intelligence Unit and told the police about 3 days before January 6th. It's not like these guys weren't warned, right? Quote, be ready to fight. Congress needs to hear glass breaking, doors kicked in, and blood from their BLM and Pantifa slave soldiers being spilled. And I'm not sure why they're putting a P on the front of Pantifa, but that's what he did. And the message continues, get violent. Stop calling this a march. Now, this came out of the FBI's field office. All right. Not the FBI saying this. They intercepted this and they passed it along to the Capitol Police. Get violent. Stop calling this a march or a rally or a protest. Go there ready for war. We get our president or we die. In all caps, nothing else will achieve this goal. And so the Capitol Police laid this out. I mean, again, 3 days before the riot, they had the intelligence assessments from the FBI and from other sources, and the Capitol Police, this was an internal assessment. Quote, supporters of the current president see January 6, 2021 as the last opportunity to overturn the results of the presidential election. This sense of desperation and disappointment may lead to more of an incentive to become violent, which is exactly what happened. And the intelligence unit of the Capitol Police said, quote, unlike previous post-election protests, the targets of the pro-Trump supporters are not necessarily the counter-protesters as they were previously. In other words, they're not just going to beat up some Antifa folks or go after Black Lives Matter. Back to the quote, but rather Congress itself is the target on the 6th. Now, this is the Capitol Police's own intelligence unit telling senior leadership of the Capitol Police this is what's going on. Quote, Stop the Steel's propensity to attract white supremacists, militia members, and others who actively promote violence may lead to a significantly dangerous situation for law enforcement and the general public alike. So why didn't they share this with the average cops, with the 200 and some odd police officers who were there on that day, who were charged with holding that building? Why didn't they tell them what was coming on? Why did they basically bury this? Why was it that when the Capitol Police said we would like, at the very least, less lethal weaponry, what's called less lethal, less than a gun, we would like things like, for example, stun grenades, rubber bullets, the stuff that they routinely fire at protesters, gas, tear gas, things like that. They apparently used some of that, although it appears that some of it might have come from the protesters as well. But even the shields that these guys carry to protect themselves in a riot situation from having things thrown at them or having people try to beat them with flagpoles and stuff, the shields that they were using were old shields that in many cases cracked because they hadn't been properly stored. The new shields that they had used just 6 months earlier on June 2nd or 20th, when Black Lives Matter did a vigil in Washington, D.C., those shields were locked away in a bus, and that bus and the shields in that bus were they couldn't get to them, right? It's because nobody knew where the key was. The key was apparently in the hands of senior leadership. I mean, all this raises a really important question. What did senior leadership know, and why did they cover this up? Why did they hide this? Why did they tell them to stand down? What happened here? I mean, these guys thought that they could stop the electoral count, that they could assassinate Pence and Pelosi, and that the 12th Amendment would then let them put Donald Trump into office. And by the way, this worked twice before for the GOP. There was the Stop the Steal rally back in 2000 down in Florida that was organized in part by Roger Stone that actually caused the U.S. Supreme Court to stop the recount in Florida that had been mandated by the Florida Supreme Court and thus hand the election to George W. Bush, even though it turned out that Al Gore got more votes than George Bush. And similarly, in 1876, Sam Tilden won the popular vote, won the Electoral College vote. But over this issue of Reconstruction, they were able to get it thrown to the House of Representatives, and Rutherford B. Hayes ended up as president, even though he lost both elections. This is what they thought they could do.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And frankly, I think they thought they would be richly rewarded for it. Trump would start giving them promotions. He'd declare martial law.